Well, hello and welcome back to Penrose Cutting. There's a reason I'm back here because I'm redoing this video. And you may think, are you going to redo all your videos? No, I'm not. But this one, again, more information's come to light, more pictures, more images. So I thought, well, having done the Walnut Tree Viaduct the second time, I think it's about time I came back and did the other three viaducts. Because, let me explain, Barry Railway had built successfully Garth Tunnel, Walnut Tree Viaduct, the link down to their main line and down to Barry Docks. They were moving a lot of coal. I mentioned in the video, by the way, 1.5 million tons in a year. It wasn't, 3 years, and that came from DS Barry's book. So it is sort of a valid figure. But they'd built their line and it'd come literally to Penrose, just down there, Penrose sidings, where they linked to the Rumney Railway. Now there was a problem. They had running rights over the Rumney as far as Caerphilly, but really no further. And of course, what the Barry wanted to do was to get up into the Rumney Valley. They could do that by getting the trains down, but then they'd have to transship here, and it was a bit of a mess. So they started looking further afield. And they started talking to the Brecon and Merthyr. Now, the Brecon and Merthyr, a funny little railway. They had got hold of a plateway tramway called the Old Rumney, which had been converted into a railway, and bought it up and were running trains from Rumney through New Tredegar, Bedworth, Macon and down to Baysleg and into Newport. It wasn't the fastest of lines. It was a lot of gradients, a lot of curves, and it was single track. So the Barry approached them and said, well, if we hooked up with your line and you gave us running rights, how about we give you a wad of cash to upgrade it? And of course they said absolutely. So the Barry put forward an act, and they managed to pass that through Parliament to allow them to extend from here at Penrose over to the Brecon and Merthyr. But to do it, they had to get over a few obstacles, including the valley over the line at Aber, and the valley over the line at the Rumney River at Llanbradach. So they had to build 3 viaducts: Penrose, Penroyal and Llanbradach. They opened up in 1905 to goods traffic, and it wasn't long afterwards that excursion traffic started passing over it as well, but it was aimed purely and simply to shift coal. The first viaduct was here at Penrose, and you can see the remains of it today. It's one of the few photographs that shows the viaduct intact with the deck on the top. But the spirit of it is captured by this painting by Gwyn Bernard Jones. You can see over the top is a Barry Railway locomotive. Coming out of the exchange sidings is a Rumney Railway locomotive. And on the right, chugging up from Nantgarrow, is a rail car from the Alexander Newport Dock Railway. But this photo is interesting because it shows where the line would have gone. And in the background, we can see the road bridge, which the Rumney would have built, and a road bridge, which the Barry would have built. And today, they look like this. They've been filled in. So we can see here the top of the Rumney road bridge, and just past it, this brick wall is actually all that's remaining of the Barry road bridge. The track continued on, and as you can see on this map, headed off down towards Caerphilly. And the next viaduct was Penroyal. The issue with this one is there are very few, if any, photographs. I've not found one of it intact. Somebody said to me, oh, there's one in this book. I got the book, turned out to be Penrose. There are images, though, of it being demolished, so we can get an idea of what it looked like. And it was very similar in structure and construction to Walnut Tree, which is not surprising, seeing it's the same people who built them. These images show it being pulled down, and you could see it would have been a metal deck on stone piers. Again, very similar to the structure used at Walnut Tree. And this shows the pier. Somebody in a comment I read said that this was their castle that they played in. I really hope they didn't get to the top because it was a heck of a long way down. Today there is absolutely nothing left to show that there was a viaduct here. When you stand underneath, this is what you see. However, if you pull back slightly, just look down to your left, there, stuck in the side of a road, is a rail. Nobody seems to know why, what it's doing there, but there's a rail. It's almost as if to say, yeah, there was something here once. However, the most impressive viaduct of the three was Llanbradach. 397 yards long with 16 spans, stood high above the Rhymney Valley and crossed over the Rhymney line and over to connect with the Brecon and Merthyr at Dyffryn-Isaf at a place they called Barry Junction. Yeah, some of the names they came up with were perhaps not too imaginative. And as I did with Walnut Tree, I'm just going to put up a few images of this viaduct, most of them from the Llanbradach side, but there is one taken from the Dyffryn-Isaf side. Enjoy. It cost about £500,000 to build this extension, most of it going on the viaducts, but it was a big success. Millions of tons of coal passed over these three structures, heading then off towards Walnut Tree and down towards Barry Docks. The Barry Railway were quite happy, the Brecon and Merthyr were quite happy. However, in 1921, the Railways Act was passed and grouping took place. The Barry Railway was a major partner in the new grouping with the Great Western Railway. The Brecon and Merthyr, not so much so. But they started looking at rationalisation, and they looked at the three viaducts and said, you know what, in reality, we don't need these. There's no rivalry now. We can run wherever we want. And as a result, they were closed. This Act of Parliament in 1926 outlines that this line would shut. In 1938, my father walked with his father from Pontmanfraith down to Llanbradach to watch the viaduct being demolished. They'd already taken the tops off. They'd cut the metal, let it fall to the ground. This was all about demolishing it and blowing up the piers. There are Pathé newsreels that show this happening, but they wanted £250 for me to include this in this video, and I kind of don't make any money from these videos as such, so yeah, you can look it up on YouTube. Today the ruins of Penrhos Viaduct are still here, though gradually being lost to nature. And the single arch at Llanbradach towers over the roadway. There are some bits of rubble left over from the pillars scattered around the place. But on the other side of the valley, there's very little to see. This little bridge is one of the few clues that there was ever a railway here. But the story doesn't end there, however. Exchange sidings were no longer needed, so both the sidings here at Penrhos and at Dyffryn-Isaf were redundant. So come World War II, they were put to use. At Dyffryn-Isaf, they were used to store USA S-100 tank locomotives that had been commissioned and put together by the 756 US Rail Shot Battalion. And over at Penrose, as this image is quite well known, these are the S160 280 locomotives, all queued up, waiting to go to France at D-Day. What I love about this photo is the soldiers looking on in some bemusement at whoever was taking the photograph, because how they got the height to get up there and take this photo, I really don't know. But what's also interesting is there in the background, if you look carefully, you can just see the ruins of Penrose and also the road bridge, which, as I say, today is completely filled in. There is one last image I want to show. This is the men building Llanbradach Viaduct. And remembering it opened in 1905, there was a very strong possibility that some of these men and boys headed off to war not long after it opened. Some of them may not have come back. We sometimes forget when we look at the remains and we look at what was built that there was a human element to it. And it must have been quite heartbreaking for them, having come back from war, to see this structure closed down within their lifetime, and for some of them to have seen it blown to smithereens. We sometimes forget the pride that was put into building some of these structures. And these remains here at Penrose and at Llanbradach remain a testimony to that pride and that effort. Hope you've enjoyed this short remake of this video. There's more to come, so please hit that like, the subscribe, the bell notification button, and until next time.